you all for coming tonight. I see our Member of Parliament, Anthony Housefather's here. I guess he wants a tempo. Okay, no, he lives in a condo. No position on tempos. Okay, so I just wanted to say, people have to understand the process and what we're discussing tonight. Everything's on. You know, in my role as mayor, I always say my main objective is to try to find a way to bring happiness to the residents of Côte Saint-Luc. That's whether through our infrastructure, building a fun community center, maintaining our roads, having beautiful flowers, having beautiful programming, cultural programming, having a great library, or perhaps having or not having tempos. It's a hard one. We know there's a movement in certain areas of the city where people want tempos. We know there's an understanding that in certain areas of the city, people don't want tempos. So how do you find that balance? What we're doing is we're at the consultation phase where there are 73 zones throughout the city. And we are going through the procedure that works as follows. So first, we have this meeting, and then council decides if they're going to move the draft bylaw, and if they do so, then we publish a notice, and everybody gets to know that, and that we pick the date, October 3rd, if this moves forward. Then on October 3rd, we publish a notice where in every one of those 73 zones, people have the right to oppose tempos. So they have 12 signatures that are required to request a registry for a referendum. Now, I am not at any point going to recommend that this council proceeds with a referendum for many reasons. It's a very expensive procedure and it causes division within the community. But what I do see is that if I see in the 73 zones that there are many zones in a particular district that got 12 signatures, and it's not very hard to get your 12 signatures. If you live in a zone where you have 3 or 4 people that live in your house that are voters, and somebody comes around with the paper to 3 homes, they get their 12 signatures and that zone's gone. I mean, if you live in a zone where you know that your neighbors are against tempos, it's not going to be hard to get the 12 signatures in the zones. So I want this council to see through this process which zones, which in the city are going to be in favor of tempos and are not. I can almost, even though I don't have a crystal ball, predict how that is going to come out. I might be wrong, but I have a feeling that in certain areas where the homes are more expensive, where people have 2-car garages, where they don't feel there's a need for tempos, they're going to get the 12 signatures pretty quickly and send that message to council. But in areas of the city where people don't have garages, and I want to let you all know that we already have a bylaw that allows people without garages to have tempos, but there will also be people in those areas that have 1-car garages or smaller homes that may be more inclined to want tempos. We're not doing this because we as a council all feel that tempos are great. There are members of council that are more lenient and more favor, but I think most of us agree that there are areas in this city that understand the movement towards tempos and also understand the movement against tempos. So we're at the process today where that's how it goes. There'll be a notice on October 3rd, there'll be the zones clearly marked, we're going to get a feeling from the public who wants tempos and who does not. I will not recommend going to referendum. Council will have to make a decision based on that information as where we want to be more lenient with respect to tempos. So with that little introduction, I'm going to open up the floor for anybody to ask any questions that you so wish. Just come to the mic.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, my name is Jacques Garon. I've been living in Côte Saint-Luc for 46 years, on Davies Street to be precise, and I'm tired of shoveling the snow for 46 years because I have a 1-car garage, 2 cars, and I'm absolutely in favor of a tempo.
Thank you.
Now, I don't know what zone I am.
You're in a zone that I have a feeling is going to have a lot of people that feel like you.
Okay.
Hi. I'm totally against the tempo.
What's your address, please?
Pardon?
You also always
name.
Or
Your
name
name,
and
Ruth
address?
Dixter on McMurray. I'm concerned, first of all, I find it an eyesore. It makes the city look dirty in the winter, and it devalues the property. However, if they cannot be abolished, I am in favor of them being abolished. If they cannot be abolished, what I'm concerned most is the respect for the deadline. in past years, throughout my time in Côte Saint-Luc where there were tempos, people do not respect the deadline. I don't think there should be a grace period after April 15th. I think if perhaps the council wants to alert the residents who do have tempos that the deadline is approaching, maybe that will help. But I think that in past years, when the residents had a slap on the hand and told them to take down their tempo, they ignored it, and it went way past the deadline. My concern is that they respect the deadline of April 15th with no grace period whatsoever.
Thank you. But you don't have to give your address for the next speaker, but if you give the street, it helps in this debate to understand, just from these people here, what the feeling is for the city.
Bonjour, Monsieur le maire.
Bonjour.
Les conseillers et conseillères. Je vais juste mentionner que la ville de Côte Saint-Luc investit des millions de dollars à l'embellissement de Côte Saint-Luc, et je pense que d'aller vers ce bylaw, d'accepter ce bylaw, ça va tout à fait à l'encontre de ce que vous faites.
Parlez dans le micro, s'il vous plaît. Et votre nom et la rue
Bonjour,
où vous vivez ici.
je m'appelle Anne-Muriel Assange, je vis sur Mâcon. Donc, comme j'ai dit, vous avez cessé des millions de dollars et ce bylaw va complètement à l'encontre de tout ce que vous faites au niveau de l'embellissement de la ville. Je comprends que les tempos soient pratiques, mais ça fait des années qu'on s'en est passé. La ville de Westmount, Outremont, Hampstead sont toujours passés de ça. Je pense que la ville de Côte Saint-Luc, les citoyens de Côte Saint-Luc pourraient aussi s'en passer. On paye beaucoup de taxes et quand on choisit de vivre à Côte Saint-Luc, si moi j'ai choisi de vivre à Côte Saint-Luc, c'est aussi l'aspect esthétique qui est important pour moi. Si un jour vous avez l'occasion, allez sur de la pelleterie, vous allez voir qu'est-ce que c'est les tempos. Et c'est vraiment une horreur là. Avoir une ville plastique, c'est vraiment pas esthétiquement pas plaisant. L'autre chose que je veux mentionner au niveau de la sécurité, quand on dit déblayer, ça évite de déblayer une voiture, ça n'empêche pas que le tempo, on est obligé de le déblayer aussi. Donc l'aspect sécurité est essentiel puisqu'il y a eu plusieurs cas d'effondrement à cause du poids de la neige. Donc ça, c'est à tenir compte. Si les gens ne sont pas capables de nettoyer leur voiture, ils ne seront aussi pas capables de nettoyer leur tempo. Et ça à prendre en considération. Donc ça va demander une plus grande vigie de la ville au niveau de la sécurité. Et aussi, qu'est-ce que vous allez faire au niveau des pénalités, les gens qui ne respectent pas les délais, comme elle a dit la dame. Qu'est-ce que vous comptez faire comme pénalité? Quelles vont être les conséquences? Les gens qui déposent, souvent ces gens-là, les gens vont déposer les abris d'impôts sur leur terrain. Donc il y a beaucoup de conséquences par rapport à ce bail-là. Et puis en espérant que vous allez refuser, aller à l'encontre du bail. Merci.
Merci. Si on va avoir un nouveau bylaw, on va avoir des règlements très spécifiques. On va voir. Merci. Okay. We're going to try to limit it for like 2 minutes, if possible, because we have a lot of people.
Sure, no problem. Neil Oberman, 5921 Tommy Douglas.
Okay.
I think you might consider that one of the more expensive parts of town, which is not a factor in your consideration. I want to address very quickly the issue of aesthetics. Aesthetics are very interesting, but that's not the metric of utility. And quite frankly, nobody who puts up a tempo is selling their home while their tempo is up. So any argument that's going to be made about property values, I think you can discount it. I can tell you that from my perspective, streets like Tommy Douglas, where the driveways are inclined, we have a very useful gardener, but he's not always so useful. And there's a public issue, which is snow that goes from the driveway onto public streets costs more to the city, which people don't take into consideration. So I think the utility has to be put in perspective. I'm sorry to say that dressing up for winter is not an aesthetically pleasing thing, but you still do it because you have to, because it's cold and it's Quebec. So I am in support of this particular position. I have read your bylaw. I think there's some things that have to be looked at. There's some wording issues that I think you want to look at in terms of, you say paved versus pavement. I don't know what you mean. The size of the tempo should be looked at as well. 3 feet from the outer limits of the sidewalk would reduce the coverage, I believe, in part of the tempo. If you really, really want to know what people think, obviously there's some people who think that it's really ugly, but the truth is, in the winter time, it's for a limited period of time. We have to take into consideration that utility sometimes outstrips, again, aesthetics. I support it. I don't know what my neighbors think, but I can tell you that if you're going to go around and get names, I'm going to be on that street, and I'm going to definitely solicit for tempos. And if people wanted to come out, they could have come out tonight. They can come out in the future. I think we have to be careful not to, again, put the issue of what people think as what is pretty versus not pretty. It's not flowers. It's security, and it will save the city money on not having to remove the snow from the public streets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. No, it's very interesting, and I think it's very interesting for everybody in this room. I am personally surprised at how many people came out in favor of tempos by the round of applause. I thought more people would be coming out against tempos. So I'm just saying, there is an issue. I understand that certain areas are going to be opposed to it and so on are not. But the point that was raised is true. Public Works keeps on telling us they'll save money for the city. That is a true fact. So that's one of the things to consider. But we have to all be open. It's nice to clap. We don't need to clap. But it's nice to know that there are opinions in favor and against, and there's reasoning that makes a lot of sense why you'd be in favor or against. Arnold Cohen.
Arnold Cohen, 5502 Randall. I want to share the views of my friend Neil and come out very strongly in favor of tempos for the reasons that he expressed and some others. First of all, I find the eyesore issue a bit of an elitist sort of view, and one person's eyesore is another person's beauty. You know, we can start banning brown buildings, brown houses. I could have looked at the gentleman's beautiful project and said, that's an eyesore. At the end of the day, for me, I think I want to applaud the council for having so quickly addressed the issue and put some standards around the kinds of tempos that need to be put up. And frankly, to me, the greater eyesore is the gray snow that the city dumps on my lawn, which there'll be a lot less of because the temple will collapse, will have the snow go towards the sides. It won't block the streets, which takes away parking. And frankly, that is a much bigger eyesore to me are those snow piles, which last until June and force me to redo and reseed the lawn every year. In terms of property values, again, I don't know that eyesores per se cause a property diminution. I can certainly say that in my house, we have one car garage. It's a 60-year-old house, which can barely hold the bikes and everything else in it. Can't even hold the car anymore because the cars are different sizes in the 50s. I think it's going to increase my property value because someone now will look at my house, which has a very nice wide 2-car driveway, and will see that there's a tempo ability, so they don't have to worry about necessarily having a garage. So with car starters and the like, it alleviates that issue, and I think it'll actually increase my house's property value. The other issue is people can afford gardeners. Yes, I have a gardener, but as everybody knows, gardeners don't necessarily come at 6 in the morning. They don't necessarily come at 8 in the morning. They don't necessarily come at 10 in the morning. And people who have small children, elderly people, even relatively able-bodied people like me, don't want to wake up at 5 in the morning to start shoveling a lot of snow or start dealing with ice issues. So I think there's a safety issue as well. One last point, I've heard some people on Facebook and otherwise say there's a safety issue, that there's going to be people robbing or people hiding out in the tempos. Again, unless they can come with evidence of that and show examples of it, we're all in charge of our own personal property and our own household security. I can choose not to lock my doors. The city doesn't mandate that. I can choose to have an alarm and not have an alarm. I can also choose to have a tempo for security reasons or otherwise. So I think that's a bit of a false hair. So at the end of the day, in terms of the whole beautification issue or property value issue, I think we have to be evidence-driven. If anyone can come up and show evidence that town property values were reduced after tempos were introduced, so be it. Otherwise, enough with the elitist issue, enough with saying what's an eyesore, not an eyesore, and let's be practical, and let's help our citizens, and let's have them decide for themselves what they want for their own properties.
Thank you. Well, that's what we're trying to do.
What is his street?
Pinedale.
Randall.
Oh, Randall. Okay, Randall.
Arnold Cohen?
Arnold Cohen, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Ilan Shriki, 5766
McClear.
Clear.
Thank you.
I had a lot of lists, a lot of things to say. Most of it was said by the two gentlemen, so I agree 100% with what they said. I do want to say that I do personally have a gardener, and he does not come at 5 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon. He comes whenever he feels like it. He just covers the middle. And at the end of the day, I have to go up and I have to shovel and do like everybody else on my street, is throw everything on the street because we kind of run out of room. You can't walk on the sidewalks. You can barely pass one car in the middle of the street when there's a snowstorm. We're talking about danger. That is dangerous. People can't come out. And I think that having a tempo is not really a danger issue. I think that throwing all the snow on the street is a danger issue. We're talking about throwing snow on our land. I've had a few occasions when the snow was thrown all the way to the window of my house. So we're no longer talking about 5 to 10 feet. We're talking about 30 feet. I think it's a little ridiculous. I'd like to talk also about the fact that we can't always put our cars in the garage. And there's freezing rain, there's snowstorms, and even if I do put my car in the garage, I still have to go in the morning and I have to go out. I don't know if you've been in our driveways, they're like this. And when you have to go through salt on your car, and there's about an inch of ice on your car, it takes a long time. So there's two options. You scratch your car, you leave it run for 10, 15 minutes, hoping the ice is going to melt, which is not very good for the environment. I think a tempo would kind of like resolve all these issues.
Thank you for bringing those points. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Ben-Simon. I live at 5553 Cavendish Boulevard. And I think it's a fabulous initiative that the City of Côte Saint-Luc is bringing forward. And I applaud the City of Côte Saint-Luc. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maury Baker. I live at 5563 Pinedale.
Welcome.
I want to wish everyone a happy new year. We're all neighbors, and we all live in a city together that we care about and which we beautify. And I do not want tempos because I really think they're an eyesore. And I think it's even hard to argue that they enhance the beauty of a city and enhance the value of a home by putting up these temporary structures for 6 months of the year. And if you want to talk about empirical information, well, if you look at the cities that allow tempos and you look at the growth in the value of those homes versus the growth in the value of the homes that forbid tempos, like Côte Saint-Luc presently, I mean, we're talking about Westmount, Hampstead, Pierrefonds, Dollard, Dorval, Pointe-Claire, Beaconsfield, Kirkland, TMR, Roxville. I'd be interested to see the growth in the value of those homes versus the value of the homes in Laval and Lachine and Verdun and Longueuil, where they allow tempos. I'm gonna guess that the houses grew in value more in those cities than the other ones. I oppose tempos on 3 reasons. First, there's the aesthetics, again, because we all live in a city where we all beautify, we plant flowers, you need a permit to cut down a tree I was just hearing about. We all live and we all enjoy the same space together. The next is security. I think, I went to go speak, I found out about this on Friday. So, and it was a holiday weekend. Today I went to the police station, Station 9, and I spoke with Lieutenant Jennings, okay, who said, in his opinion, temporary carports would increase the opportunity for added car break-ins, more home break-ins through the garage, because people can hide inside and not be seen. So, for example, at night, about a month ago, my car was broken into in front of my house. Someone...
No talking from the back.
Hang on.
Lori, Irving, you know the rules here. Only Lori's allowed to speak.
Pardon me?
No, he's not allowed to interrupt you. He's not allowed to interrupt you.
So what I was saying was, my car was broken into, and apparently when I spoke to the police, people go up and down the streets at night, checking for cars that are undone. And during the daytime now, people can go to Tempos and check the cars. Look for garage doors that aren't locked. Maybe there's a loose piece of wood. Maybe it's an inferior garage door. It could add, according to the police lieutenant of Station 9, he thinks there's an added chance of break-ins. That's not my, this is him, okay? The last one is safety. During daylight savings time, it's dark in the morning. It's dark when we come home. It's very difficult to see children coming home from school. It's difficult to see cars, plows coming by. You're exiting out of a tempo. There's a higher chance that the city could be at liability for adding these tempos where all of a sudden, you know, we didn't have them before, but now maybe, God forbid, a child is hurt coming out, walking across on a car, exiting a tempo. You can't even see. So I think there is a legitimate safety risk. And I also think there's a pest problem where you can be creating shelters for animals in the wintertime. They're always looking for a place to come in, whether that's, you know, squirrels, skunks, mice, raccoons, groundhogs, squirrels, anything. It's an added public nuisance. And with respect to the comment about the snow, you know, being shot on the lawn, it's not like it's magic. If you have a tempo, it's going to evaporate in the air. It's just going to be on the side of your lawn. Whether it was pushed onto the street and shot back onto your lawn, it'll just fall onto your lawn. It doesn't disappear. It's not a magical device. I think they're an eyesore, and I really don't want them. And I think just finding out about it on Friday, the more people I've spoken to about it, the more people are opposed about it. The meeting, again, we found out on Friday. Today's Tuesday, it was a holiday weekend. I think it was October the 3rd. More and more people would be here.
Well, thank you for all your comments. I want to say a couple of things in response to Mr. Baker's comments. First of all, this is the beginning of the process, and October 3rd is the time when you start with the notice, so there's going to be a lot of time, and this will definitely be in the Suburban, so probably front page. So the reality is everyone's going to know about it, and we're going to get everybody's opinion over time, and we'll be able to make appropriate decisions based on that. What I would, though, like, and I think he brought up a very good point, just for empirical data, is to mandate staff, and if you could take a note of that, Maitre Schechter, is to have the report on the various cities that were mentioned that allow tempos and don't allow tempos, and look for the last 10 years at their property values and where they went up or not. So council has an understanding of the property values in those cities that allow tempos, how they've changed over the last 10 years as opposed to cities that do not allow tempos. I know some will have to tweak that because some cities that have more expensive property value just go up for other reasons, but it's good information to know. So I appreciate that point, and I think it's something that council should take a look at. Go ahead.
Patrick, I live on my clear. So for the question of tempos, I heard security, I heard eyesore, and you mentioned the new year coming. Let's think about our neighbors, about elderly neighbors that cannot that wake up at 5 in the morning to clean. People with young children, myself. If a tempo is allowed to put it, if not, I'm not going to put it. I have a snowblower, and I actually clean the driveway of 3 of my neighbors who. One is an elderly guy, the other one is have a lot of kids, so they cannot do it. And the point being that we should think about our neighbors. Eyesore, minus 30, minus 40, snow. You really care if your house looks pretty or not? Honestly, So turning on your car before you have to leave, and security. I'm sorry. Speeding in Côte Saint-Luc is a security issue, not tempos. Speeding still an issue. Speeding was an issue, still an issue. On my clear, still. You guys put the bollards and took it off anyway. It's not the point of the conversation here. But to say that I am in favor for my neighbors, because if we gotta take signatures on my clear, I'm sure we can get them. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's Ramesh Tolandas from Nice Street.
Nice.
Nice. Okay.
Nice.
Sorry, can I have your name?
Yeah, it's Ramesh Tolandas.
Okay.
The thing is, you can have tempos with like these see-through window types. You can see it. Or if they want to make it pretty, you can have them all in pink and all see-through, so you can see everybody. Anyhow, the thing is, I think tempos are good for the aging population. As the population ages, there'll be more need for tempos. So I think everybody should consider what is going to be happening, and then take necessary action.
Thank you. Thank you. Tamar Hertz, welcome.
Hi, I live on Smart Avenue, and I actually have a tempo. I've been enjoying the use of a tempo, so I'm not going to take a stance either way. But I do rent a tempo every year, and the company has shown up often before the deadline and put up the metal structure, and I'm like, how are you able to do this? And I said, well, there's a loophole in the bylaw that if it's not put together with the tarp, then it's not considered a tempo. So the frames for these things could be going up outside of the period. So if you're writing a bylaw for the city, if you could take this into consideration. And also my experience has been, I'm going to have a tempo, I don't have a garage, but the visibility backing out of my tempo is much less than if I didn't have one. And sometimes the windows, either if you rent one, sometimes they come with tape on them, so something should be put in to really make sure that there's visibility through that window into the bylaw. Thank you.
Take note of that, Maitre Schechter. The visibility of the window should be clear, and also in terms of the structure going up before the date. Okay. Sydney Margulies, welcome.
how they get used, if they get used, and your provision under Article 1513F. I don't think that charging $75 for a permit for someone who has a garage is an adequate fee. My contention is that person who has a garage must prove above and beyond the fact that he claims he can't use the garage, that he cannot actually use it. And so for those who have garages, I would propose an amendment that the permit for those who have garages be $200 for the season and $75 for those who do not have garages. I think that's the first thing, because you require inspections. There's a cost for inspections. At $75, I think the city will lose money. And it's time that the city use the concept of user pay. We have far too many things that are being given to the people of the city. I would make the same comment with regard to those who have on-street permits in certain areas where there are garage spaces available, but they refuse to use them because they don't want to pay the landlord for the use of the garage. So instead, they apply to the city for a permit to park on the street, which is a nominal amount in relation to what it should cost. So I would propose in this Article 1 of the bylaw, with regard to fees, that the minimum amount for a home with a garage, that the cost of the permit shall be $200.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement. Mr. Check will put that in the minutes. Thank you. These are the last questions. Those standing are the last questions.
Hi.
Get in line now or forever hold your peace till the next consult or so.
My name's Jeff Weinstein. I live on Fairside. I'm for tempos, not only for the convenience. The convenience is second issue, but we have a gardener. We pay him a lot of money. We used to have a gardener that never came, so then we pay even more money to a better gardener. And even still, after salting, I have a duplex. My tenant fell last year on the ice. She's like 60 years old. My wife has fallen. My dad's fallen. So like with these steep driveways, it becomes a safety concern that people are just falling. And luckily, nobody's broken anything, but it could happen. I mean, I'm sure people break elbows and hips and stuff in Côte Saint-Luc because of that. So I'm for it because of that.
Thank you.
I support Mindell. Just the comment to what he just said, I'm saying it doesn't make sense. Oh, sorry. I'm saying if you have a tempo, you still have to. What are you doing with your walkway? Are we going to now allow tempos from our door to the sidewalk?
No, that's not in discussion.
It's not in discussion. So you still need a gardener. And I'm saying I live in Côte Saint-Luc. I go to work every day. My gardener not only shows up during the night to do my driveway. I'm saying I have cars on my driveway. We will have one car. He'll come back when we leave and come again. So I don't know who your gardeners are, but maybe you need to look into a better gardener, because I'm telling you, I have a gardener that comes several times a day. So that's like should be a non-issue. And why are we here today with this? From reading, you know, when I found out about this meeting on Friday, you know, I did a little bit of research. This has been an issue that has been put down many times. Why is it being brought back? Our past mayor agreed that we would never have a bylaw like this, and it would never.
No, he's right in the room. What he did.
I quoted him. He was quoted in the newspaper.
No.
And he said that it wouldn't bring down the city value. So was he misquoted?
It was under Mayor Housefather that we instituted.
Yes. Was he misquoted?
We instituted tempos for homes without garages when he was mayor, and now there's a movement within our city. The demographics always are changing, and there is a movement towards tempos, as you can see here tonight. So we're listening to the people. We'll see where we go with it.
I understand this is an elderly community, and I feel for them. But you know, do you want only, you know, you're beautifying your city, you're beautifying your parks. For who? For who? Only the elderly? No, I don't think the elderly are going on new schemes and new slides. I don't think that's what it is. Who are you doing this for?
For everyone, but we appreciate your comments.
But my question is, there was a comment that it would bring down our house values. Is it? You must the work must have been done.
We'll look into that, though. I said we're already going to look into comparisons with other
Well,
cities.
I read 2 different articles where our past mayor was quoted on that, so it's either true or not.
I don't know. You have to show me. I'll speak to Anthony later about that. Irving Itman, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's interesting. It is interesting that some of the things I wrote down over the last couple of days were said by so many people here in favor of tempos. I don't need one. I have a garage, and not only that, my driveway is on a slight slope, very slight slope up. So it's not a question of the declining driveways. But all the things that have been talked about, and I have a philosophy. I respect what you do, just respect.
Into the mic.
So that's how our democracy works. Ugly. Yes, they are ugly. But so are some of the townhouses here just around the corner. All right? And if we're talking, excuse me, but if we're talking about elitist, the word elitist came out, and I added another one.
Mr. Itman,
in Hampstead, I'll address the chair. Hello, chair.
Hi.
In Hampstead, they just completed a project, which I spoke to an architect. He's never seen such an ugly project, if you know where it is.
Let's stick to tempos.
The tempos. Good thing you reminded me. Not so many years ago, as the city became progressive, people had 2, 3, and 4 cars parked on the grass, made mud, gouged out the grass, and city council looked at it, analyzed it, and said, hey, we got to widen the bylaw for driveways.
I moved that.
You moved that, bravo. Now I like you. 2-income families don't have time. Daycare, etc. Yes, sir. Not only aging, but a lot of you younger people, when I had black hair, I was on my back for 30 days. Back problems, arm problems, the Macarena, you know what I mean? The gardener that showed up at 6 o'clock doesn't come back. You know why? He's probably at that lady's house.
You're on fire. What is it with you today?
I'm on the roll. Two more things. You say devalue. It's strange that when the PQ, Madame Marois, came into power, our homes were devalued, not by tempo. So there's a lot of things that go into the mix. I'm very much in favor for tempos.
Thank you, Mr.
It's not a question of votes, it's not entitlement, and it's not an eyesore. And many of the people, young and old, go away to Florida, and they don't look at that. So those people that need, and again, your bylaw is very specific, etc. Very much in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Itman, and thank you for bringing us some. He wins for the funniest. You're next.
Louis Cohen, Wildwood Avenue. I have a few points to make about various topics that were brought up before. As far as the security issue, yes, it's possible that there will be someone that will go into your tempo to see if there's any valuables in your car, but you have to take everything into perspective. The same thing with locking your door. If you choose to leave your door unlocked, there's a safety issue. If you choose to have a tempo, there's a possibility of a safety issue, but it's on your property. It's not affecting your neighbor's property. As far as another issue of not being able to see when you come out of your tempo, yes, it's true. You will have limited vision coming out of the tempo, but by the same idea, you don't have to shoot up your driveway, which has ice in it, which I've seen many people do because they're afraid of sliding back down. Now that you have a nice dry asphalt driveway, you can back up ever so slowly and you can see people walking on the sidewalk, or you can see the city plow coming by. So I don't believe that that's an issue. My third topic is one of the residents stated that there should be a $200 fee if you have a garage. He's not taking into account that many people, well, I shouldn't say many people, but there are people who have more vehicles than garage spaces. So if someone has a garage space and a driveway space and they don't want to use it, that's one thing. But to say everyone that has a garage has a $200 fee, no, that's not correct. That's only if you have sufficient space to put it in the garage. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Okay, you're the last speaker at this meeting, and then we're going to open up our public council meeting.
Marilyn Siegel, I'm at 5752 Palmer. And there's basically one point I'd like to make, and that is that I am in favor of the tempo. The aesthetics, honestly, are irrelevant to me. My father, unfortunately, passed away just a month and a half ago, and he could have used the tempo. And although the issue is irrelevant to my household, I still wanted to come out tonight and support his elderly friends, our elderly neighbors, people who, like my father, were adamant about wanting to live out their lives in their family home, and they need support for it. You know, beyond my having been a caregiver for my father, the temple would have been a huge help, and that's basically the reason the main reason why I like to see the temple.
Thank you for coming. So that concludes this meeting. That was the last speaker for the tempo meeting. We're going to open up the next meeting. So I'm going to... do I need a motion for adjournment? Yeah. Motion for adjournment. Councilor Kovacs. Councilor Berko. All in favor?